Hello, this is Monica Morrissey, and this is the vlog Soul Whisperings. And today we have a special guest, and her name is Wendy Verwey, and I believe she's from Canada. And so her story is after the divorce and death of family members, Wendy took control of her money once and for all and was able to retire at age 41 as a single mom. How did she do it? She simplified her life. She uses her free framework to create a life she doesn't need a vacation from. Now she teaches others to use what they know, have, and do to create freedom for themselves. Wendy covers topics like your true hourly wage, what your job costs you to have, which is based on this book, I believe, correct? Your
Yes.
money or your life, and the three questions to change your life and your relationship with money. Health is wealth, redefining what success means to you. And her podcast is called Fire Yourself First. And FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early, which she has embraced. So, voting with your dollars, finding investments that align with what you want to see in the world, her casual, relatable, and fun approach to life inspires listeners to take control of their money and their lives. And I will say that I have been loving your podcast and some of the conversations around money. So here we are today with Wendy. Would you like to share a little bit more about yourself?
Oh, thank you so much, Monica. That was such a great introduction. It's always funny hearing things about yourself. It's like, oh, really? That's that's me. Oh, that is me. I do that.
That's awesome.
It's so fun. Yeah, everything. Kind of coming into this whole world of finance, that was not anything that I ever dreamed was going to be my life. I don't have a degree in finance. I didn't actually go to university. I went to a local community college and took travel and tourism when I was young because I wanted freedom. I wanted to travel. I wanted, this grand adventure called life. And somehow, you know, the world turns and decisions are made and things happen and opportunities exist. And this is where I ended up. And I'm so grateful every day for, all of the great things and even all of the things that didn't seem so great in the moment to bring me to this place right now. So thank you so much for having me today and listening to the podcast. It's my labor of love, and just the most fun I can have every week.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit. You've told me before, your money or your life, 9 steps to transforming your relationship with money and achieving financial independence. So this triggered like you to really make big changes in your life. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, back, probably 8 or 9 years ago, I was just feeling very stuck. I was married, I had two young children. Um, we had a nice house and, had all of the things that a successful person is supposed to have, had a good job, all of that kind of stuff. But I was unsatisfied and there was just this like undertone of unhappiness and where I wasn't necessarily being true to myself or whatever. Anyway, I was waiting for a sign of something to change and I got all the signs all at once when my husband left because he had also been, feeling this pull of, this isn't right. This doesn't feel good for us anymore. And so he left and I was kind of shocked because, I made this commitment and that's what you do. You get married and you stick it out and you stay married till you're old and then you die. And that was, kind of the definition of a successful marriage. Um, but anyway, that happened and that kind of rocked my world. And I had been reading a lot of um, self-help books and professional development. I'd done a lot of that through my corporate job. Um, and I was coming across books like The 4 Hour Work Week. And I thought, well, isn't that great? Like, I could do a 4 hour work week. That would be fantastic. And they talk about outsourcing things and, simplifying a lot of things in your life. And then I don't even remember how I came across Your Money or Your Life. But it came into my world. And I read the book, and it was so very simple, step by step. You're reading it now, so you can you can attest to this. Like, there's some just very simple calculations when you really look at what is important to you, and do more of that, and do less of all the things that everybody tells you are important, or all the noise that's around. And just embracing the principles in Your Money or Your Life. I started tracking my spending. I looked at, what was I spending my money on, and did it align with what I actually truly wanted in my life? Because at this point I was now, in the process of getting divorced. And so I'd gone from a double income to now a single income with 2 little kids. And my husband had moved a couple hours away, so I was completely on my own. A couple of months after that, my dad passed away, and then my father-in-law died, and then even my dog died. Like, it was a country song.
Mhm.
Um, but it was like every man that I loved in my life was suddenly gone in
Mhm.
less than a year. It was about 10 months from sort of the divorce till the end of all the losses. Um, and I was completely on my own. And I just realized, okay, I can just be a victim and I can whine and complain about it, or I can take some control. And the book, Your Money or Your Life, helped me to take control and figure out what is important to me. What do I actually want in my life, and how can I achieve it? And I really went under this transformation. This was about, it was 2018 was the country song. And 2018, I just took control of everything. I applied the principles in this book. I did kind of a full Marie Kondo of my life where I tidied up everything. I moved to a smaller house um, in town, so I didn't have a commute. I could walk to work. My kids no longer needed daycare because of the location I was in. I was able to free up a bunch of money
Mm.
by simplifying things. And then I learned how to invest. And by learning how to invest, I was, again, voting with my dollars. I was investing in companies that meant something to me, that, were the change that I wanted to see in the world. Um, and yeah, it led me to this beautiful place. So then when a few years ago, 3 years ago now, my company that I'd been working really, really hard in, and stressing about all of the things, the PowerPoint presentations, and going to this meeting, and do I have the right talk ready, and all of that kind of stuff. And I was like, why am I so stressed about all of this stuff all the time when none of this actually matters? And when my company had a reorg, they were putting people in new positions and stuff. And for me, my greatest fear was that I would be put into a position that I absolutely hated. And my biggest goal was, please fire me. I'm no, I don't belong with the vision of the company, where it was going. I don't belong anymore, because my life is going in a different direction. And so when it came down to, they were making the decisions of who was staying and who was going, I got my wish, and they let me go. And that was that was my sign that I'd waited for. Was, no, go and be and do all of the things. So I had already built up some savings and investments, and looked at, how can I continue to make things grow for myself and not have to rely on a job to do that for me, on a job that it was not fulfilling me, that was, kind of eating away at my soul day after day. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up in this space. And that book, Your Money or Your Life, was pivotal in just getting me to open my eyes to what is possible.
Yeah. So one of the concepts in this book is, and I know that you work on this, is your true hourly rate wage.
Mm. Yeah.
And I like your story of how you moved, right, to save, and gas and things like that, so that you could walk to work. Tell us a little bit more about the true hourly wage, and what will surprise people the most.
Ooh, so it's a fascinating process. I actually have a calculator on my website. If you go to wendyverwey.com, there's a free calculator that you can go in and plug in your own numbers. But I have to warn you, you can't unsee the number. do it at your own risk. But so the true hourly wage thing, so it came from, again, it was part of the concept, was part of your money or your life, but I took it in my own personal situation. I started looking at, well, what does my regular day look like? So on paper, say I made $50 an hour at this corporate job. If I'm working 2,000 hours a year, which is kind of standard, then that's $100,000 salary a year. That's a good income. Like, you should be far in life with that kind of income, right? But then I started looking at, what are all the things that I have to do in order to have that job? So I started calculating, how much time does it take me to get ready in the morning, right? Like, just doing my hair, grooming, having the right kind of clothes for, business casual, or, for fancier meetings or whatever it happened to be. The time that it took, extra time to get myself ready first before I got my children up, to get them off to daycare. And then I'm spending money at daycare because they can't come with me to my job. They have to go somewhere else. So I have to pay somebody else to watch my children while I go and do this. So that was another piece. The commuting time, right? How much am I spending in gas, in insurance, in parking, maintenance of my vehicle? That if I didn't have that job, would I have all of those expenses? Right. And so those are the actual costs, but then also the time it took. I had about a 30-minute commute each way to and from work. So the time that I was going to my job was not time that I was paid for. It was just time that took out of my regular life in order to have this job. Then, you go into work, park the car, maybe stop and get a Starbucks, because that's what everybody does on the way into work. So that costs money. That takes a bit of time. You go in, you do your job for a few hours. Then you go out for lunch with a coworker to, catch up on the office gossip, go back to work, have another few hours. And by the end of the day, you're just fried and don't have the energy to go home and cook a healthy meal for your family. So you pick up some takeout on the way home, and you get there and you've got to pick up the kids from daycare. And then you have a glass of wine to, celebrate that you survived another day. Get the kids sorted out, get them to bed, and then maybe sit on the couch and watch Netflix for a couple hours to recover from your life, and dream about this 2-week vacation at the beach, where that's where you actually get to live. That's where you get to experience life. And so this calculator puts together all of those pieces. It puts together a cost of the time, as well as the dollars and cents it costs to have all of these things in your life. And so when I did this for me, this $50 an hour job, I was making less than $10 an hour.
That's
and
crazy.
Right. And this is what I mean when you can't unsee it. So it brought me to a point where I'm like, why am I stressing about this PowerPoint presentation on the weekends when I'm making less than minimum wage? I'm making less than $10 an hour. At that point, I had a cleaning lady, because I couldn't keep up with the housework and the kids and the working full time, being a single mom. So I had a house cleaner, and I was paying her $20 an hour. I'm like, I could be a house cleaner and have a better quality of life than what I'm doing right now.
Perfect.
Right. So yeah, it was very, very eye-opening. But then that also gave me the power to start making some decisions. Like, what do I actually want? I didn't have to just quit my job because, on my calculator, I was making $10 an hour, because that didn't make a lot of sense right off the bat. But I started looking at, well, what things can I do? I can, do some more meal prep so that I'm bringing my lunch in to work and I've got dinners ready in the slow cooker or something like that, right? At the end of the day, making things easier, so that I'm not spending that extra time or money. I can, what I ended up doing was moving. I had an acreage home that was taking a lot of maintenance, right? Just cutting the grass on the weekend took a few hours. And so I sold the acreage home and I moved to a rented duplex in town. And so I could walk to work. It was a 5-minute walk and it was beautiful. I could, breathe and stop. And I had to walk through this little park. And in the summertime, they had beautiful flowers. And in the wintertime, they decorated it all with Christmas lights. So I had just this lovely intro and outro when I was going and coming home from work. So that was beautiful. Um, I when we moved to town, my kids, they could take the school bus, but it wasn't that far, but the time that they got on the school bus meant that I didn't have before school care
Mm.
anymore. I didn't have to worry about early morning stuff because I could get them on the bus and then walk to work. And I managed to work out my hours with my boss so that I could meet them at the bus after school. So I didn't have any before or after school care costs anymore. That saved me so much money and so much time. And then we had this connection now, this extra time that I could be with my children. And it wasn't stressed time. It was, you know, borrowed time essentially, where we could celebrate it. Um, so yeah, doing all of those little things, and I didn't do them all at once. But just, they add up over time. And by being able to do that, I increased my true hourly wage. So essentially I gave myself a raise without ever having to ask my boss.
Right. Because it sounds like you kind of were doing these things kind of like, oh, this is what everybody else does. And you weren't really seeing it as like a cost. You were just kind of doing it. Like, this
Yep,
is how life goes. Right. But when you really evaluate every hour of your day, it sounds, you were able to, take back some of your time and cut your expenses in small ways. And
absolutely.
so you mentioned it earlier. One of the strategies in this book is that you have to record all of your expenses. Well, you have to record all of your expenses and your anything coming in, right? So you have two kind of columns, plus, minus.
Actually, I just did it in a notebook.
Yeah.
So I can show you, this was my little notebook that I used. I just got it at the dollar store and I
Uh,
just carried this thing around with me and just, wrote any money that was coming in and then out what I was spending and what I was spending it on. And then you could sort of see what are the trends, right?
mm,
Which categories are you spending money on? I ended up with 5 categories on food. Just to be able to drill down really, really granularly on what food costs, right? What was I spending on groceries versus takeout versus dinners out versus, convenient stuff, coffee and snacks at the vending machine, all of that kind of stuff. Because I really wanted to see um, how much was I spending, first of all, and were these expenses aligned with the life that I wanted? I wanted to be healthy. And by spending that much on takeout food, that was not leading me to a healthy lifestyle.
yeah.
And, then I could make some decisions around, yeah, I can increase my grocery budget, or I can just buy some more convenient grocery items, right?
Mm,
Like I can get a rotisserie chicken that's already cooked.
yeah.
So I don't have to worry about, something going bad in the fridge before I have a chance to use it. I can get the pre-cut carrots or, just making things really simple, but still moving towards the lifestyle that I wanted. And the tracking stuff, like I actually have, I built my own little notebook on, you can get it on Amazon. Um, and it's just kind of the same thing. If you can't find a little notebook and it's just got all of the blank pages there. And I talk about it in my intro to financial freedom course, showing you all of these little ins and outs and the categories that I use and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So one of the things in the book about this tracking, so I'm just finishing up September, I tracked. And it was funny because they talk about like click click click, right? Like, it's so easy to put something in my Amazon cart and then just purchase it, and then the next day I'm like, oh, did I really want to do that? So, like, one of the strategies that I've done is I wait 24 hours before I hit the purchase button and really think about, one, do I want to write this one down? Because I'm holding myself accountable. And two, does this resonate with, you know, what you were saying? Does it align with who I am and what I want in life? And then three, I liked they were like, okay, so you're going to purchase something. Let's go back to your, let's say you're making $20 an hour now in that $50 an hour job. Is do I want to, is that giving, really technically it's kind of like this energetic trade, right? I'm giving up an hour of my work to purchase X, Y, and Z. And that energy shift for me was like, it was huge. And it wouldn't seem like it was that huge, but when we aren't handing over a dollar bill or a $20 bill and we're just clicking, it's like we never even are connected to that, right? Because it's all digital. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's just a interesting month for me to be like, am I going to write this one down? Do I really want to see this one in print? And it really kind of held me back a couple of times, which was a good thing. Like, I don't need this. And I actually bought something and sent it back. I was like, nope, I'm not paying $100 for this. What am I doing? Because that is X amount of hours of work for me. So, like, it just didn't align with what I was looking for.
Yeah. Oh, well, good for you. And I know like a couple years ago, because I've been retired now for 3 years, and I get bored because all my friends are still working. Right? So I'm always looking for other things to do. I mean, I always have other projects on the go and stuff, but I had a friend who she was the manager at a store in the mall. And she said, would you want to come and work for a couple of shifts a week just for something to do? And the store, they sold essential oils and diffusers and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, I always like their products. And I thought if any store in the mall, that's the one I would want to work at because everybody was friendly and stuff. Plus, it was the winter, and I decided I'm a grown up and I'm allowed to leave my house after dark. So I just needed a reason to do it. So on the weeks that I didn't have my children when they were with their dad, then I would work a couple of shifts at the mall. And it was great because it got me out of the house and I could go and, see people and tell them about these products. And it didn't feel, pushy. There was no commission or anything like that. It was just, hey, have you tried this thing? Because I was excited about them. Um, but I was making $15 an hour. Right. And I knew that I wasn't there for the money. I was there just to be out of my house. But there were some other people that were working there that, were much younger. And the one girl, she would go to the food court every shift for her lunch or her dinner, whatever meal it was. And she would always get, Starbucks coffee, and then she would go get whatever meal. And each shift, it would cost at least $15. Right.
Mm.
And so I started chatting with her and I'm like, do you realize like, so if you have, a 6-hour shift, you really, one of those hours just paid for your lunch. Like you don't have to do that. And they kind of made fun of me at first because there was like a little fridge and a microwave in the back room, and I had a 15-minute break. It's retail, you don't get a whole lot of perks. But I would always bring like soup or a sandwich or whatever. I would just bring something that I could snack on easily at work. And they were always like, why do you do that? I'm like, because I don't want to spend extra time here in order to pay for that. Right. And yeah, it was just very, very eye-opening. So hopefully I helped a few of the employees kind of reevaluate some of the things that they were doing.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit. I read a book. It was called Grow Your Self Worth to Grow Your Net Worth.
Mm.
What do you think about like money and abundance being an internal job? What are your thoughts about that?
Oh my gosh. There's so much around all of that. And I just love the statement self-worth equals net worth. You hear a lot, your network equals your net worth. Um, in kind of the entrepreneurship world. But yeah, self-worth equals your net worth. It is so true. And I was just thinking this weekend, I did a little experiment because I was so intent on tracking all of my spending with your money or your life. And I think it's very, very important to do, especially just to get a baseline of, where are the holes, where are the pockets that you have opportunities to change things. But what I started looking at this weekend was around I've not been tracking my abundance,
Mm.
right? And so because all of us get into this lack mentality, right? This mindset of, oh, I'm not worthy, or I'll never make this much money, or I'm not worth it, or, why would somebody pay me to do this thing, or whatever it happened to be. And so I started this experiment and I made like a little money bowl. And every day, I would just write down all of the ways that money came into my world. And this is a new experiment. So I went to um, a a natural store in my town where, they have crystals and incense and all kinds of fun things. And I just love the vibe in there. It just always feels so peaceful and loving. So I went into the store just thinking, okay, yeah, I just want to get some things for this money bowl.
Mhm.
And I walked up and I found an actual bowl that's beautiful. It's like heavy and it just felt really good in my hands. I'm like, this bowl is going to bring me some money. And so when I went to go pay for the items that I had, the woman at the checkout, she's like, "Do you collect pennies?" And I'm like, "Well, not especially," but she's like, "Oh, well, I'm just, if you'd like one, I'll give you a penny." I'm like, "Oh, sure, I will add this to my money bowl." And so I wrote that down on my list. I have a little list next to my bowl that these are all the things that I'm grateful for, all the ways that money has come into my life. And so I wrote down some random stranger gave me a penny. Wasn't that nice? And it can be things like, um, actually this morning, I had recommended a friend for a human design reading.
Mm.
I was talking to somebody about human design earlier, and I was just saying how I've been going down this rabbit hole and how much I loved it. And so she got in touch with me a little bit later. She's like, "Oh, I've been going down the rabbit hole too. Do you know anybody that does readings?" I'm like, "Absolutely, talk to my friend." And so I sent her to my friend, and my friend's like, "Well, where can I send you the money?" And I'm like, "What money?" She's like, "Oh, well, it's like an affiliate thing, and I'm happy to pay you for the recommendation, for the referral." I'm like, "Well, isn't that lovely? I didn't think that was gonna happen." Right? And then I have an Airbnb suite, and I had long-term renters, and they just left yesterday. And so I knew that they were leaving, and that's totally fine. They come back every summer. Uh, but I had the suite open, and I was, getting ready to put all of the things back together for my short-term renters. That I didn't have anybody come in for a couple of weeks. And the next day I woke up first thing in the morning to a text, "Hey, can we come in for one night?" Absolutely. Right. It was just like all of these little things. Even my kid's dad came and fixed my roof yesterday. So I saved probably $1,000 in labor because he knew how to do the things and was happy to help me because we built this, friendly relationship. Um, so all of these little things I start writing down of all the ways abundance comes into my life. So it's not just looking at all of the money that's going out and stressing about the bills and all of that kind of stuff, but it's also looking at what are the ways that it's coming into you, because then you can receive more,
Mm. So it
right?
sounds like it's a real gratitude practice.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
the law of attraction, right? The more that you appreciate something, even that penny, which I love. So I didn't used to track, this is really bad, but I didn't used to track my royalties for my books
Mm,
because they were like really small at first.
yeah.
Now they're growing, but it was like, nah, it's $5. And then I was like, wait a second, I have to appreciate that $5 in order for that $5 to turn into $50, which turns into $500, right? Like it's that domino effect.
Sure.
I love it. And there's something about money in our culture, at least. I know that we're a little bit different culture, but um, comments like, "Oh, she's so rich,"
Mm,
and that is like, because that's how I grew up, right? Is putting these people down. But it was a block, right? Because if I'm making comments about that person and saying that person is bad, then therefore I never want to be that person. And therefore I'm not going to talk about money like that. And so, like, I just feel like you're really listening to your soul and that you're aligning with your soul in this work.
yeah. 100%. It's so powerful. And I grew up the same way, right? It was like, "Oh, well, oh, they have the fancy things. They're the fancy people," right? I grew up in a very working class town. Um, my dad worked really hard to keep a roof over our heads. Um, but that was another message, right? That you have to work hard in order to have money. And there's a big difference between making money and earning money.
Mhm.
And that was a big shift, right? Like these are all things that go through all of our heads on a constant basis, even myself, right? Like I'm a money coach. I try and help people build strategies around their life that align with the ways that they bring in money, the ways that they spend their money, because I want them to have these really full lives. But it's something that I struggle with too. I've struggled for a long time, just around those messages. What are those core memories that we have and that we're holding on to? Because it's, it's kind of I'm going to butcher the the adage. It's something like, if you think you can, you're right, and if you think you can't, you're right.
Yep.
So choose one.
Yep.
You're allowed to be whoever you want to be. You're allowed to be rich and kind.
Mhm.
You're allowed to be rich and generous.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah. So you mentioned, how you grew up, and you know, that was the thing, right? You went to work and you worked hard, and then you came home and you did dinner, and you got up the next day and you went and did the other thing. And I noticed when I went back and looked at some of my, so like, it's all about our thinking, right?
Oh yeah.
And like re kind of directing that. So like, when I started my money, like understanding like what was going on within me, I realized, so my dad had his own business in town. And it's funny because people from the outside looking in actually made those comments probably about our family. Oh, well, they have a business, they're rich. But when I was growing up, there was so much stress around, the business. It ended up doing very well. And then it went downhill later on in my parents' life. They're no longer here. And we sold the business a while ago. But, I really realized that I took on that money story within me, and that like I had to work hard. I had to work two or three jobs. I had to like, like this lack of everything, right? And so I read this book. I think it was Jen Sincero, A Badass at Making Money. I don't know, have you
I
read that
just
book?
finished rereading that one again. I've read that one probably 6 or 7 times. I love it.
So she has this saying, I love money and money loves me because money helps me be the best me that I can be. So, how has this journey helped you connect to your soul, and then also to help others connect to their soul in a meaningful way?
Oh, wow. There I've been going back to reading a lot of like old-timey books. Um, because a lot of them, they have the same principles, right? They're just saying them in more modern language now. But Think and Grow Rich by
Mm,
Napoleon Hill, he talks about this a lot. He's like, the only way that you can make any kind of difference in the world is to be rich,
mm,
right? Because when you think about it, if I want to help a cause, how can I do that? I can donate a little bit of my time between jobs in
mhm,
order to do that and feel good. Or I could donate a whole lot of money that would make a big difference for whatever organization it was, right? Like, what kind of impact do I want to have in the world? And, you don't have to be ruthless. You don't have to follow the old paradigm of, old white men in suits know best about everything in order to kind of get that to get that money coming into your life. And even, for me, it was really around defining what success looks like. I was always kind of taught to play small,
mhm,
right? It's like, well, who do you think you are? You
mhm.
know, we're not those people.
Yeah.
You're from these humble beginnings, and that's where you shall stay. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Mm,
It really doesn't. And so that's why, like, I love my podcast, Fire Yourself First. So again, FIRE is the acronym for Financial Independence, Retire Early. Um, but I love it because I get to have conversations with normal people, just like me, that are they're doing interesting things. And some of them bring in money, and some of them are, just mindset shifts and stuff like that. But I feel like it's one of those situations where it's like, well, if she can do it, so can I. right? Just being able to inspire people to look at life a little bit differently. Um, I say I retired 3 years ago, and that is true. But, not in the traditional retirement sense. I'm not 65, I'm not drawing a pension, all of that kind of stuff, but I have control over my time. I have control over what I put my energy to. Um, I have all kinds of projects on the go. Like when you're free of that kind of the schedule and you're free of that mentality, there's so much more that you can do in the world. Right? Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm writing books. I do dog sitting because I love dogs, not because, it's making me millions of dollars. It's definitely adding to, what I can spend on a daily basis. But, I have an Airbnb suite and I love my short-term renters because I get to meet people and, hear their stories and find out about them without ever having to leave my house. But I
Mm.
get to have these individual interactions, right? And um, so yeah, it's just been a really interesting journey.
Yeah,
Um,
I can
kind of going
relate
on
to a lot
this.
of what you're saying. So I technically retired from public education last year, and people are like, "Oh, how's your retirement going?" I'm like, "Well, I'm pretty busy because I've got all these projects that light me up, and I think that your work really lights you up. And so like you really feel it in your soul that like if I can give this gift of what I have to others. So tell us more about if somebody wants to work with you and to try to understand this more, what are the opportunities that you offer?
Oh yeah, not all kinds of ways. So my website is wendyverwey.com. I've got an online course called Intro to Financial Freedom, and it takes you through kind of the very baby steps of, understanding what do you want in your life
Mm,
and starting to track your spending, looking at how much life energy you're spending um, every time you make a purchase. And really just kind of brings the whole concept of your money or your life um, into real terms, right? And you've got my spreadsheets and my templates and all of that. So you're not starting from scratch. So I've got online programs. I've got a few master classes and different things on different topics there. You can also work with me one-on-one. I do, um, I call it a clarity session, where we can get together for a couple of hours and really dive into, what do you want out of your life in all areas, not just financial, right?
mm,
Because so much is tied together. So, for me, I always look at I tried to do vision boards, but I'm not a visual person. I'm a words person. I'm a writer, right? In my heart, right? And so for me, my vision board is just in the middle is a circle that says healthy and strong, and
mm,
around it is mind, body, soul, finances, and relationships. And
mm,
to me, those pillars are what makes a successful life, right? So we'll dive into those areas. Like, where are you at with your health? Because if you have all the money in the world, but you're not healthy, you really don't have anything,
mhm,
right? Maybe let's start there. Where are you at with your relationships? With your relationship with, your significant other, romantic relationships with your family, with your children, with your friends, with yourself?
mm.
Because again, that comes back to the self-worth part.
Yeah.
Um, because if you've got all the money in the world, but you don't have anybody to share it with, what's kind of the point? We look at all of those pillars. And then, on the work side, or I call it the self-expression, um, what are the things that you're doing that light you up? It doesn't mean you have to quit your job tomorrow and
Mm,
starve. We can look at what are some ways that you can maximize what you're doing already while you look at how can you do something on your own, if that's even what you want, because not everybody is cut out to be an entrepreneur, and that is fine. That is totally okay.
yeah.
Right.
So
So
I can definitely like I can see it. I did like a 5 year transition basically from when I started like seeing what really lit me up, and what I knew that my job wasn't doing that for me anymore. I knew like I had to do something different for my health purposes too, right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Um,
And yeah, like for me, I only do work that doesn't feel like work.
mm, I
Right.
love that. Yeah. So, there was in this book, again, I'm reading this book before I make my appointment with you, to just like make sure that I understand, where I am in my life right now. And it's really helping me. But there was a dime in this book, and I was gonna say, um, it was about writing down, tracking everything that came into you, kind of similar to your penny, right? So pennies are a message from my mom, and so your little story is actually like a little, like, you know mom's proud of me kind of moment, and which she didn't do when she was here, but now she does it when she's there. So it says, where will you record the dimes you find on the sidewalk, the quarters you retrieve from vending machines, and your gambling winnings? Well, I don't gamble, but um that was just a I love it when I get dimes in books, because I know that that's my right path, and I know it's my dad guiding me. And so I'm super excited. So let's just talk about entrepreneur. You mentioned it a little bit, and we were talking about the Picasso story,
Mm.
and that somebody asked Picasso to draw. I'm just going to go over the story really quick, and then I'll let you talk. Picasso, they asked him to draw, a painting on a napkin. And at the end, he said, like, it's $1 million or something. And they said, well, what do you mean? It only took you 5 minutes. And he's like, you're not just paying me for the time that it took me. You're paying me for the value that I have in the all the years of experience that I have. Talk about that in the entrepreneur world, like when you're setting your prices. And this goes again back to the self-worth equals net worth, right? When you're setting a price, are you valued enough?
Yeah, 100%. So there's another, I think it was a meme that was going around, and it was about a ship repair something. There's this massive ship, and there was some leak, or there's something happening with it. And so the engineers, they couldn't figure it out. So they finally called this person who was supposed to be the expert. And this was, way back when.
Mhm.
And so they got the bill, and it was, $50,000 or something like that. And they're like, what? You came in and you hit the hammer one time. Like, how's that worth $50,000? And and so he sent back an itemized bill that said, um, tap with of the hammer, $5. The rest is knowing where to tap and how hard,
Yeah.
right? But that nobody else could figure out. So
Yep.
yeah, I mean, knowing your worth is massive. When I kind of accidentally stumbled upon coaching. I never meant to be an entrepreneur. But I got to the point where I was retired and I was out playing and doing things, and people kept asking me, like, how did you do this? Like, how are you just taking your kayak out at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday? I'm like, oh, well. So I started teaching them. And then I got into the whole coaching space, and it's amazing when you go online and you get into these groups and you see, what other people are doing and what they're charging and what they're not and what kind of programs they have, and you start comparing yourself to everybody else. um and I remember I had one mentor who was like, oh, well, you're just a baby coach. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I guess I am, right? And that just totally deflated my self-worth. Like, okay, I've got to start from the very bottom and charge, really basic prices and all that, just to get some momentum and get the word out and all that kind of stuff. But then when I really sat back and thought about it, I'm like, I have 20 years of corporate strategy development. um, I That's what I did for 20 years, was figure out efficient systems, help people understand what is your end goal, and work the baby steps in order how to get back there. The years of experience, the lived experience that I have, that is worth something.
Hmm.
And I mean, I don't charge, and again, looking at, like, do you want I mean, I don't work with clients that are, um, they're millions of dollars in debt, and they can't, they're going to the food bank, right?
Hmm.
That's not who I can help right now. I can help them in other ways, but that's not who I can help right now. I can help the people that, they're frustrated with this definition of success that has been all around them their whole life, but they're still feeling dissatisfied. I can help the people that, um, maybe they've got this corporate job and they're just looking for a way out, but they don't know how to do it. They need permission
Mm.
in order to do it. And those are the people that I can help. And I've invested in coaches for years, even before I retired, just to figure out like what do I actually want in my life. And I happily paid them. And it was again this energy exchange because what
Mhm.
I got back, I mean, yes, I had to do the work,
Mhm.
but what I got back and just the accountability of that energy exchange meant that I was going to do the work.
Yep.
And it brought me to this place where I am now, where, I get to do work that doesn't feel like work. And that is definitely worth something. So, for anybody watching and listening, when you're worried about stuff like just make a list of all of the things that you've accomplished in your life, right? Whether it's courses that you've taken, experiences that you've had, all of these things mean something and they all have worth.
Yeah, they all have value. I love it. So we met on Tori's Spiritual Boss Club. And if you're an entrepreneur out there, I highly recommend Tori. And she'll be joining us actually on a vlog soon. Um, let's just, what's your, let me think. Uh, let's see. What in life do you absolutely love?
I have so much gratitude for every day. Um, I absolutely love that I get to be so grateful. Like when things are stressful, if you got the bills piling up and all of that kind of stuff, and just things are happening and it feels out of your control, like I'll literally lay in bed and just say, thank you. Thank you for these sheets that are comfy and keeping me warm. Thank you for the toothbrush that I get to use to keep my teeth healthy. Thank you for this roof over my head. It can just be these little teeny tiny minor things. Um, but when they go unnoticed, then it just adds to the stress. But when you can start to notice um just all of the things to be grateful for. And I wake up every day and I'm so just excited for whatever experience is going to come that day.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's definitely changed my gratitude practice is just thinking about that cup of coffee in the morning. And
Yeah.
like, you don't think about it or thank it or thank the universe for your cup of coffee until the electricity goes out and you can't have your cup of coffee. And all of a sudden you're scrambling and saying, oh man, but just appreciating that everything, my electricity's on, I have lights, all those kinds of things. I do want to go back because I did think of something um, back to the story about when, somebody said you're a baby coach. I
Mm,
feel like sometimes we get these tests from the universe
mm.
that kind of say like, "Oh, you think you're hot shit?" Like almost and let's just, you know, peg you down a notch and then you have to say, "Nope, not turning to that. I am hot shit and it's okay." And just embracing that like good feeling inside of us, right? That we had when we were little, right? We used to, be happy go lucky little kids, most likely, for most people. But I just feel like that was like a little test to the universe to say, okay, big shot, you want to go do these things. Let's just settle down here. But then when you could look at it in a different frame and say, no way, I got 20 years. That person doesn't even know me, right? Like they really didn't know you at your, at the level that you know yourself. So I just want everybody to feel their internal value, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. So, where can people find you?
So you can find me on my website, wendyverwey.com. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, and my podcast, Fire Yourself First. I'd love it if you join me over there.
Yeah, so I love that. So the way that you spell all these notes will be um, in the note section on the vlog. It's Verwey is Verwey, and Instagram is at I am Wendy Verwey. And so I just want to make sure people can find you. And I look forward to seeing you in our weekly club call for Spiritual Boss Club. Super fun to talk about intuition and spirituality and how it kind of, helps us in our businesses. So thank you for joining me today. And maybe we'll have you back for another conversation.
I'd love it anytime. Thank you so much for having me, Monica.